We're still 2 weeks away from the opening of the transfer window, and the Premier League season has yet to come to an end. But let's be honest, as Arsenal fans, there's not really a lot to look forward to. Yes, we could secure second place if we beat Newcastle on Sunday, but given our recent results against them, who knows what's going to happen. So really, all we have to look forward to give us hope is the excitement of a promised massive transfer window. Andrea Berta has been brought in from Atletico just for his specialty in signing strikers, it seems. And, of course, you don't need me to tell you, everyone else has already told you, Arsenal need a striker.
Arsenal need a new striker.
Arsenal need a striker, badly.
They need a striker. And every year, Mikel chooses not to do that. He goes with Gabby, and now he goes with Havertz, and they think they can do it. But in the crunch time, those guys go missing.
I think we need a striker.
Do we need a new striker in summer?
But do Arsenal still need to bring a number 9, a striker in the summer?
In the summer, yeah, I can understand a bit better when people were screaming about a striker.
So we are, I'm sure, going to be buying a striker. Because if we don't buy a striker in this window, if it's just more left backs and goalkeepers, I think there's going to be a march on the stadium. We are going to buy a striker. Everybody knows we are. We may even buy more than one. Who knows? We might do an Aston Villa and buy 3. But yesterday on the live stream, I took the unprecedented step of issuing my own "Here we go," my done and dusted on Viktor Gyökeres, because I felt that with Andrea Berta coming in specifically to sign a striker, with his background in signing some of the world's best strikers for Atletico, he has apparently from the very outset felt that Viktor Gyökeres of Sporting CP is the perfect player for us. And, well, he is probably the most informed striker in Europe, scoring a goal every 70 minutes. Now, something like 50 goals, 12 of which are penalties, but he's in the prime age for a striker. There are question marks, of course, as there will always be around a player that comes in from Portugal. Is the Portuguese league a competitive enough league to buy players from? After all, Liverpool bought Darwin Núñez when he was on a similar hot streak at Benfica, and it hasn't quite worked out the way Liverpool fans would want. But he has won a Premier League, so maybe it is a good precedent to set. With Andrea Berta's heart set on Viktor Gyökeres, us badly needing a striker, him being within the price range, Sporting have dropped the price. It looks impossible for us to get Alexander Isak. This, I think, is as good a striker as we can possibly sign, and one that a lot of teams would like to have. So for me, yesterday, it seemed like this is a done and dusted. Done and dusted! However, today, the platform formerly known as Twitter X was alive with stories that there had been a disagreement, that although Andrea Berta has his heart set on Viktor Gyökeres, Mikel Arteta favours Benjamin Šeško. Benjamin Šeško, the player that we almost brought in last summer at the very beginning before the Euros took place. And then he strangely decided to stay at RB Leipzig. RB Leipzig haven't had a great time of it. But Benjamin Šeško, despite starting slowly, has really grown into the season. And at only 22 is full of promise. Now, I'm not going to get into it here. I've watched considerably more of Benjamin Šeško than I have of Viktor Gyökeres, because I do watch a lot of German football. And I'm not 100% convinced, but I wasn't 100% convinced about Alexander Isak. I'm hardly a reliable person to ask on these things. I have no scouting pedigree at all. I will say, though, that Benjamin Šeško's goal against Bayern is one of the best goals I've seen this season. If he's confident as he was taking that shot, and he comes to the Emirates, I think this is a potential player over the next 2 or 3 years. It does feel strange, though, doesn't it, that we would be talking about a player who could grow into being the best striker when we desperately need someone to do it right now. There are a couple of schools of thought here. One would be that, look, if Marina can squeeze goals up front, Benjamin Šeško or Viktor Gyökeres are definitely going to do it. And Šeško does help us to build for the future, possibly fits our style of play better. Any number of reasons why you might pick one over the other. But that's not really the debate. I don't really want to get into who's better between Gyokeres or Šeško. That's a personal opinion that you will have, and I'm not here to disagree with you. What I'm interested in is who actually decides the transfers at Arsenal. Clearly, Viktor Gyökeres, if he is somebody that Andrea Berta wants, and Andrea Berta has decided that's who he wants, Does Arteta have the clout to tell him no? Now, despite this being a big story of their disagreement, and the first story of any such disagreement between Mikel Arteta and Andrea Berta, Mikel Arteta in his own press conference gave a very weird reply to the question when he was asked if he'd gotten on. He said, look, I got on with Edu for 5.5 years, and I don't think there will be any disagreement at all with Andrea Berta. He seemed to be suggesting that what happens is he says the kind of players he wants, he makes a strong case for them, and Andrea Berta goes out and gets them. But the reason I find this unusual is we didn't go out and bring Andrea Berta, a hugely experienced negotiator and player getter, just to have Arteta tell him who to get. This kind of harkens back to the time where Arsene Wenger and David Dein did such a fantastic job at Arsenal, where Arsene was responsible for deciding who he wanted and David Dein made it happen. That's not the relationship in this situation at all. And maybe it should be, but football has moved on. Nowadays, with sporting directors typically, certainly in the European model, are responsible for the overall strategy of the club and the way that the football is played. So they will most typically decide the kind of players they want, but not alone, obviously. We have our own analytics company called StatDNA and an entire scouting network that will analyze statistics, performance metrics, and really find the right kind of players and the right profiles for the strategy, for the overarching sporting vision of the club, which is still Andrea Berta, the sporting director. But in most European models, there's a first-team coach rather than a manager. And there is a distinct difference between Arteta as a first-team coach who gets the players that Andrea Berta thinks he should have and coaches them, basically, and a manager who has far more input. And of course, when Andrea Berta was brought in, there was a lot made of the fact that Mikel Arteta had some input into that. That said, even if Arteta's opinion was sought during the hiring process, Andrea Berta is still his boss. If Mikel Arteta is sacked at the end of the coming season, it will be Andrea Berta that does it. So really, Mikel Arteta, you would think, would not have as much say in this as Berta. I don't know if there has been a disagreement between the two. But I also find it really weird. If Andrea Berta wants Viktor Gyökeres, clearly he's given it some thought. He would have mentioned it in the recruitment phase. This will be something that he and Arteta have discussed. Arteta's own point was, we talk about it, and if there is a disagreement, it's because we haven't done a good enough job of explaining what we want. On the other hand, a lot of Andrea Berta's team, the scouting network and the contracts department, have worked so hard on the Benjamin Šeško deal, will probably prefer to get further with that one than start this negotiating phase. Ben Jacobs, the former CBS journalist talking on Curtis Shaw TV, said, actually, Arsenal haven't decided between Gyokeres and Šeško. They haven't decided it's definitely one of those two. The point he was making was, we are waiting till the end of the season to see if there's any chance at all we can sign Alexander Isak. Reports are that if we put 150 million on the table, Newcastle will take it. I don't know if that's true. And I'm not even sure I'd want Alexander Isak if he cost about as much as Benjamin Šeško and Viktor Gyökeres combined. Surely it makes more sense to buy both of those two. I would love to see us buy both of those two. But I think what this whole story brings to light is the long-held belief by many within the Arsenal fan base that Mikel Arteta is the guiding light of all transfers. And that, I think, is just not the case. For a kickoff, we have Andrea Berta as a sporting director, Jason Ato, his assistant director, who apparently was working on all the deals he and Edu were working on. Whatever happened to them, I don't know. But one of them might well have been either Gyokeres or Benjamin Šeško. Then there's James Ellis. He's the head of recruitment. He focuses on identifying potential signings. He will have had a lot to say about this. He will be working with the scouting and analytics team, and they, of course, will have presented at least a short list for Mikel Arteta to choose from, because I guarantee you Mikel Arteta isn't scouting the world for potential strikers and then handing over to a scouting and analytics team. Richard Garlick, of course, is head of football operations. He works closely with the legal and financial teams to make sure that the salary structures are in place, that everything meets our overarching ambitions as a club. Tim Lewis is a non-executive director. He has final approval on all these things. And then, of course, Stan and Josh Kroenke will have something to say about it as well. What I'm saying is there are a lot of people involved in these transfers, and it has to be done to some degree by committee. I feel the weirdest thing about this would be if Mikel Arteta, who knows his job is on the line, he knows that if there isn't silverware at the end of next season, it's going to be really hard for him to stay in a job. It would take maybe reaching a Champions League final and narrowly losing it, maybe a last gasp defeat that sees us not quite win the Premier League, but massive improvement. We, as a fan base, are growing tired of being second. Now, I know that makes us entitled and infuriatingly entitled for teams that would dream of being second. There are a lot of clubs out there that have very little sympathy for us as fans when we get upset because we only made the Champions League semi-final, second place in the league. Although, as I say that, of course, we might lose to Newcastle. We could finish fourth. This, however, is a season for Arteta to prove himself, or I think leave. And given that, if you were Arteta, wouldn't you be pushing for the player right now, the 26-year-old who's scoring a goal every 70 minutes, over the long-term prospect of Benjamin Šeško? Something about this doesn't ring true to me. I'm not sure that Mikel Arteta would insist on bringing in a player who might not work. I've watched a lot of Šeško. I like him, but I wonder about his temperament when things are going against him. Viktor Gyökeres might not work out, but at least if you go and sign the player everybody in the fan base seems to want, you've got a better chance, haven't you? I'm really interested in how this goes. I hope with the Zubimendi deal done and dusted, I'm going to keep trying that one, that we are about to bring in at least one striker. As a wild card, would you take Ollie Watkins? Are you, and I want to hear from you, if you're a fan who doesn't think we need a striker. In any case, today's news, I think, has kind of blown over. We are no closer to knowing if Viktor Gyökeres is coming. However, I did say yesterday that I think this is a done deal. Everything I've read seems to point to the fact that we are getting Viktor Gyökeres. And even though I haven't seen much of him and what I've seen of him leaves me a little bit worried he doesn't quite suit our style of play, he is, according to one of his own teammates, as imposing as Suarez. And I tell you what, having missed out on Suarez all those years ago because of only bidding £1 over his apparent release clause, it would be great to get a... And look, I think we're overdue a striker. In Arteta's 6-year tenure, we've signed Kai Havertz and Gabby Jesus, and neither of those are the out-and-out striker that we do seem to need. Let me know in the comments how you feel, but I think my takeaway from all of this is that we have an oversimplistic view of transfers as Arsenal fans. We think that Arteta says who he wants and everybody else snaps to it. I think at least what we're seeing now is that his is not the only voice. I don't think it ever has been, but it definitely isn't now. Let me know if you want to see Andrea Berta or Mikel Arteta win this apparent disagreement. And until I see you again, be lucky! Lots of love. Now, just before we do anything else, I would just say thank you so much to everybody who's liked and subscribed videos recently. Channel's been going great guns. Can't do it without you. Please, if you haven't yet, do take time to click the, oh, you know the drill.
Tuned in, red and white thread on Apple. The cooler channel got the heat, torch the gavel. Every match dissected with precision so keen. Streaming live, they the North London scene. Feel the floor, keep it raw in the booth. Big stars, small stars, all chasing the truth. From Highbury's ghosts to Emirates dreams. Unifying worldwide, we connected through screens. Look and tells, history in the veins. Terry sprinting past defenders in chains.